So welcome everybody to tonight's meetup from the Vienna Data Science Group. My name is Florian Türk, and I have the pleasure to be the moderator of tonight's evening. We have a packed agenda, as already mentioned. We will have some usual things, some new stuff. As usual, we have the Vienna Data Science Group introduction. Then our host, the EuroCC and INiTS, will present a little bit of their agenda. We have the main talks afterwards. They will be a little bit shorter this time because we have 3 of them. Also, the questions will be limited to like 2 this time because, as you can see, we have afterwards the roundtable. So we have a more interactive format where Wolfgang will guide questions to the 3 speakers. We have the open mic session as usual. Don't be afraid if you have like something to say to the audience. If you have one slide, usually 60 seconds that you want to present to the audience. If it's like a job offer, or you're searching for a job, or you just have some cool project that you want to present, you can still upload those slides to our slide deck. It's in the meetup description, and you still have some time to do that. And again, we have the raffle of the book. And afterwards, of course, the main part, which is socializing and discussion after the talks. So, yeah, without further ado, I would hand it over to Wolfgang Weidinger, the chair of the Vienna Data Science Group.
Thanks, Florian. My excuse to do that part is always the question, who is here the first time? Please raise your hand. Yeah, you're my excuse now to do these slides, which others who came more often have seen quite often. But I will do it quite fast because, yeah, we really have a tight program today. And I mean, yes, the socializing is important, but I still think that before that it's also quite important, to be honest. So who are we and what are we doing? We're in a data science group. We are not just a meetup. We will come to that afterwards. We are a non-profit association. That means we don't get money for what we are doing. Strange thing, I know. But that means we are also quite independent. So today we don't want to sell you anything. We are not interested in that. And hopefully we will give you a quite good insight in what's happening in life sciences with AI. I mean, these are all very interesting things. But what is our mission? More or less our mission is you. To create a really cool, vibrant community of everybody who is interested in data and AI. So yes, we are a data science group, but we were called that 11 years ago. Back then, data science was really everything. Now, if you think about that and if you talk to other people, they say, isn't it not like just that? No. We had talks about engineering, MLOps, everything over the years. So we try to be quite broad, let's put it like that. Why is that our mission? Because we deeply believe that this will lead to a wide-scale implementation of data and AI tools for, yeah, just cool stuff. And that is why we are here. I will not bore you with what our members consist of, but I can just tell you, yes, we are quite diverse. We are really from academics, professionals, different fields, and yes, we deeply believe in that to generate impact, we have to think at least Europe-wide, maybe worldwide, but still we feel that, let's say Vienna is a nice city, so that's why we called ourselves Vienna Data Science Group, but our scope was always more to the outside than to the inside. And yes, talking about members, we also have a board. 3 people are here. Florian is one of them. Georg, where are you? Yeah, Georg is here. So if you have questions about it afterwards, please approach us to bring some faces to who is behind that. Again, what are we doing? Mission, yeah, community, nice, but what is this community doing? We have 4 pillars. Knowledge sharing. Okay, man. Come on, we are doing that now. Education, a lot of our members teach at the university, generate curricula for that, give talks at universities. So yes, impact on society, later on for that more. Let's say we are engaged in a wide variety of forums and groups. So how do we achieve that? First, we created, and please challenge us there, but I think we are quite good connected. So the largest independent data and AI meetup in our opinion, Central and Eastern Europe. We are really good connected, so please, if you say, no, there is a bigger one, more influential, okay, that's good. Please tell us. We had, I think it was now 200 events, workshops, hackathons, whatever. And please also think about the next date. It's on 23rd of June at Magenta, and it will be really cool with Manuel and Jolton. Will be there. Really, really cool talks. I talked about impact on society, and this is my bridge now to what we hear afterwards. Yes, in Austria, a lot is happening about AI. Maybe some of you don't believe it, but it's really true. We participate in a wide variety of forums there. We are in the AI stakeholder forum, which informs the AI strategy, and also working on artificial intelligence working group at Austrian Standards. And if you don't believe that Austria is also doing something quite tangible, afterwards you will hear it's very tangible. I'm just saying AI factory. And yes, we are also doing something tangible in sense of we had this vision that what all we do to bring it in one book, it has now 1,100 pages. So if you need something to kill somebody, buy it. It's really effective, I think. It's in English and German, and it's not a new edition. Is now 2025. And yes, we deeply believe that we really cover everything there. After 4 editions, unofficially 4, officially 3, we are really now really broad, and our publisher is telling us, please, just divide it into 5 books or something like that. Yeah. So last chance to get it all in one. So why am I telling you that? I just wanted to show you that we try to create something which is bigger than us together. And for that, we always need support. Companies, you. So if you are into that, being in groups, being in stakeholder forums, writing books, teaching, creating this impact, come to us. I'm pretty sure you can support us in many ways. One of these ways is become a member. And yes, now we come to the also very tangible part of location and catering. Very, very thanks for huge thanks to INiTS and EuroCC. EuroCC we will hear from afterwards. And also really a lot of thanks to all our sponsors and partners over the years who provided everything we need to do the work we do. And for you as a last service, we are on quite a lot of channels. Meetup, you seem to be obviously on, I would assume maybe. Yes, we still have email. Sorry about that, but some people are still demanding that. But again, before I talked about fax, so that's also not that. We don't have a fax number. LinkedIn, obviously, and Slack, if that's your cup of tea, please. And that's it from me, I think. Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Wolfgang. And we'll continue with our sponsor. So we already mentioned that this meetup is sponsored by EuroCC, Austria, and INiTS. And we have now Henry Delio with us, who will tell you a little bit, a little bit about what they are doing. So he is an AI lecturer and fellow at the Uni Wien and TU Wien. So he's teaching ML system engineering. I think it's a very interesting and important topic nowadays. But yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Wolfgang and Florian, for the introduction. I want to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, the sponsors. Thank you, INiTS. INiTS is the Vienna high-tech incubator, and then EuroCC, which is the group that manages the AI workloads running on the supercomputing infrastructure in Vienna specifically. I want to talk a little bit about the AI factory, the Austrian AI factory. It's essentially a European initiative which is spread. It's not just for Austria, but also in a few other locations, in Rome, in Italy, in Sweden as well, Spain, etc., etc. And what we're trying to build there is essentially upgrade the existing supercomputers for running large-scale AI workflows. In a sense, it's a small European response to Project Stargate. Has anybody heard about Project Stargate? $500 billion in America. This project, Europe-wide, is, I think, in the range of $2 billion. And what it is about is essentially upgrade the supercomputers, the existing supercomputers. There are a few big ones. Leonardo, Lumi, they have roughly 10 to 15,000 GPUs. And a few smaller ones, including the ones that we have in Vienna. So they have a lot of hardware. Depends what means a lot. But then there's a big gap in software. So we have GPUs, but we don't have very good software. Like if I want to run something that is beyond naive workloads, I don't have very good tool support. And then there's little to no consulting services and training. Training means actually teaching people how to work on supercomputers. And there's marketing, like how do you let people know where you can find these things? How can you get access? How can you onboard, right? So this is the pillars of the offerings that we intend to actually cover with the AI Factory. This is very brief. There are multiple partners involved. Most of the universities, big universities in Austria and Vienna, IIT, INiTS, and TU Wien as well. Whoops. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start talking a little bit about that software infrastructure. Also in my lectures, when I teach actually master and PhD students from the data science specialization, and when they come to me, they're clueless. They don't know what's coming ahead. Like, what do companies actually need when they go and work for something? And one of the pieces that is missing from both education as well as what you see from the supercomputing clusters is the operations piece, the software that actually makes everything run smoothly. So what we intend to do with the bigger supercomputers that we have is, first of all, provide a first layer of abstraction API layer. They don't have that now. If you want to use them, you have to go get shell access. You have to do everything with shell. That's not how professional ML engineering works. So we want to add a layer of APIs so that companies specifically, one of the main purposes, by the way, for these supercomputers is to be used by industry for industrial workloads. And that means also to support not just training models, but also inference, the full life cycle, essentially. So the first layer is that, just an API layer that makes it easily accessible also from outside. The second layer is akin to an operating system, as I said, right? Like the AI lifecycle operations platform, that's what we call it. It's essentially like the abstraction here is similar to how you work with a computer. The first layer is hardware, That's the bottom layer there. We have Musica, Vega, Leonardo is the bigger one from Rome. And then you have the driver layer, that's the API. Then you have the OS, that's your Microsoft Windows or whatever. And then the top layer is the application. How do you work, how do you run an application, how do you build an application that involves building models. That's what we call AI capabilities platform. So that would enable you as an ML engineer or even a low-code persona, domain expert, to actually build a full ML application on top of a supercomputer. But that's the vision. And we're just starting now. Okay, just a little bit, a quick sneak peek into this AI lifecycle operations platform. What does it have? What does it need? So it needs all the components that we actually need as engineers to run production workloads. Meaning we need a feature store, a data lake, model repositories, hyperparameter tuner, evaluation repositories, inference service, monitoring, et cetera, right? And we need an orchestration service for both batch workloads as well as real time. So we need the full thing, essentially, and that's what this AI factory is about, especially that layer about software. Okay, I'm going to close here. There are multiple openings. We've just started with this. It's a big vision to sort of make the supercomputers that were actually built for classic simulation workflows, to make them AI ready. And we need a lot of those roles there, including also pure ML engineers and data science, but specifically data and ML platform engineers, senior data and ML platform engineers. We're looking actively for this. There's no official job posting yet. It's going to come up in the next couple of weeks, and whoever is interested can come talk to me afterwards. My email is there, as well as as well as just find me either on LinkedIn or from the QR codes there. So I'm also listed at the EuroCC page. So yeah, cool stuff is happening. This thing is becoming real. Austria is leading the charge for once in the supercomputing phase. Yes. So we're in a good position. Thank you.
Thanks. Test. It's a new mic. Oh, it's working. Yeah, actually, I think most of you have worked with ML are aware that those are skills which are usually not taught at the university, because there you get a data set and you work with that. So the whole integration path is highly relevant. And I also cannot highlight enough that we already have a supercomputer infrastructure. The VSC is there already and is open for SMEs and for startups and academics to just use it. So you can approach them also via us and then get your account there and get started and use a supercomputer. So that's something which not all countries have. We actually have no seats in the front or second front row. I mean, I know that people prefer to stay close to the buffet area because that's the best places usually. But if you don't want to stand, just feel free to use the short break while we get to the next speaker. Don't be shy and come to the front. Or not. Okay, so with that, we will just proceed with our first speaker. Actually, and this time I need cue cards. So our first speaker will be Georg Wiedhalm, and he is an associate professor at the Department of Neurosurgery at the Medical University of Vienna. He's also the head of the section for neurosurgical oncology, the director of interdisciplinary neuro-oncology tumor board at the Competence Centre, and the chair of the section for neurosurgical oncology of the Austrian Neurosurgical Oncology Society. So I think if there are some words which got stuck with you, that's probably surgery and oncology. There was not too much AI mentioned there, but I will leave that part to his talk. So if everything is set up, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introduction. Does it work? Okay. Now it works?
Give me a second.
Hello? Okay, no, great. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and then the invitation. It's really a big honor for me to introduce some data from the Medical University in Vienna about some clinical, practical experience also with AI in neurosurgery. So the first brain tumor surgery in Vienna, it was 1904, and yes, you see here, it was not very advanced. It was the tumor was removed with a finger. So it changed a little bit in the last years and the decades. So now we are in the century of AI and brain tumor surgery is done with a lot of techniques we are doing. So before I come to the AI, I also want to introduce some other techniques that are also important that you also see. It's not only the AI, but we have a lot of different techniques that support the neurosurgeons that we really have the best outcome for the patients. So also the molecular classification in the AI age changed dramatically. Now we can classify the brain tumors according to molecular markers. So that's really very precise, and these markers can predict the prognosis of the patient course. So what are the options? What can we do in brain tumor surgery? We can do a resection whenever it's possible with a tumor removal. That has the advantage we can remove the tumor and also make a diagnosis. So that's always under a microscope. And in some cases, we also only do a biopsy, so with a needle that you can do a diagnosis, like you see here with the navigation guidance. So what are the challenges? So first, brain tumors are often very close to functional areas, so speech, motor function. So if you remove too much, you will have a permanent deficit, for example, a speech deficit. Second, it's very difficult to see the tumor borders. And then, in approximately half of the cases, you have a residual tumor, what's very bad for the prognosis. Then you have heterogeneity, so you have different parts in the tumor that have different malignancies. And during needle biopsies, you can also collect some tissue where you cannot make a diagnosis. So what are our tools that we have, including also the AI? So we use a microscope and the new navigation where we have all these imaging modalities included. It's like in a car, and we really can take all these different informations during surgery to make it really very precise and enable the maximal safety for the patient. Here, for example, we could detect a small area that was malignant already in the PET scan and could identify it during surgery. So it's very, very helpful. So also we have electrophysiology, so we have these tracts that have, for example, speech function or motor function. You can really precisely see that also during surgery. For example, here we have such a sucker, and then that can tell us how far we are to the motor tract, for example. Here it's also an awake surgery where the patient is tested during the brain tumor surgery, the speech regularly, and then we can remove as much until the patient develops a speech problem. We also have an intraoperative MRI. That's an MRI directly next to our OR that we have since some years. And so when I think the surgery and the tumor is removed, I can do directly in the OR the MRI scan and check it if we have some residual tumor. So you see here, that's the operating theater where I do this brain tumor surgery, and it's very, very close. So here, now you see after I think I did this complete resection of the tumor, the patient is removed to the MRI. And then what did we detect in this intraoperative MRI? We found this small residual tumor that's very bad if we leave it for the further patient prognosis. And because of these images, we could directly remove it during the same surgery. So it was very, very helpful. So what we also do is fluorescence guidance. So that's a fluorescence marker. It's a drinking solution. You get it 3 hours prior to surgery. We have a modified microscope. And for example, here you have the brain, and it's very difficult to find where the tumor is. Can you imagine where the tumor is? Are any experts here? For me, it's also very difficult, so and then we can switch to the fluorescence light, and you don't see it so well, but here is the tumor. I have a short movie where you also can imagine. Here's the tumor, and then you remove this tumor here, and you can see that in right fluorescence. Here, you have the sucker, and then always can switch to the light and see if there's some residual tumor left. And then you can remove it. And always you have such a stimulator to check how far you are to the function. And now we come to this AI part. Next to these all techniques that we have available in the OR, we have another solution now the last years that's really very new. Because for us it's very important to have this intraoperative tissue characterization. Because we have the problem that intraoperative histopathology is very time consuming. So we have to send the tissue to the neuropathology department. You have to make the staining, and that takes, until we get the result, approximately 45 minutes. Of course, that's a very long time where we don't know which exact tumor it is. We don't know what's the best strategy, surgical strategy for the patient. And so we searched for better analysis, and also to better find and to define the tumor border. For example, in gliomas, in primary brain tumors, you really cannot say and see it where is the exact border. And so we thought, is there a new technique, an AI tool, for example, to better visualize and help us in the OR? And so that new technique that we are using in Vienna at the Medical University is based on the stimulated Raman histology technique. It's a combination of a laser and microscope. And the advantage is that we have a very rapid histopathological diagnosis within few minutes. And so in 2020, we were the first center in Europe that could use this tool that was developed in San Francisco in Silicon Valley. And until that time, we have bought it now, we analyzed approximately 80 patients with brain and spinal tumors. So you see here very different tumors that we could analyze with the machine. And so how does it practically work? You have this machine in the OR, and you can analyze a small tissue sample that we collect during surgery with this machine. And after 3 minutes or like that, you get a digital image, and that can be assessed from the neuropathology department online, and then they can do a fast diagnosis. And the advantage is you also can do with this technique the AI. So here you see these images, so that's the digital, very fast histopathological images. And here it's really very precise, and you can see all the information that the neuropathologists are used on conventional histopathology. So they were really very impressed of these images that normally take 45 minutes. And so that's the workflow, how it works in the OR. So that's the open brain, and then so we use the navigation system and to approach the tumor. So that's the microscope here. So here I remove tumor tissue. Now that's our technician, and then we include it here in the machine that's directly to the operating field and make this analysis. And so it's very fast. After some minutes you get these very nice images. And also here you have this AI tool That's our neuropathologists that can analyze it, and they have additional this AI information. For example, what tumor type it is, and then they call me and no fax. It's only with a telephone, and they tell me what diagnosis, and so I can really modify my surgical strategy based on that. So in the first cases, approximately 100 cases, we compared the conventional technique that takes 45 minutes with our new technique, and it was very accurate. In 99% of cases, we had the correct diagnosis. And with the AI, we really collected a lot of images in the last years, and then so in cooperation projects together with US and then also 2 centers in Germany have it. In the meanwhile, we could develop a lot of AI applications, and then that help the neuropathologist and us to have some automatic diagnosis. So, for example, we developed an AI for rapid tumor detection. So we analyzed over 2 million image analysis of specific tissue properties, and with this tool we can predict what tumor type it is. So we can predict the 8 main tumor types. For example, in this case, the machine tells us it will be a malignant glioma, so a malignant primary tumor, and not, for example, a brain metastasis. So that's really very helpful and then very fast. So the next tool that we developed is that the tumor can predict us the presence of tumor tissue. That's very important. For example, in the needle biopsy, where you take the tissue, and then you want to know, can we make a diagnosis on this tissue sample? Because that would be a catastrophe for us if we do a biopsy and we have to tell the patient 2 weeks afterwards we cannot make we don't have any result because maybe it was not accurate enough. So that's why it's always very important to have an intraoperative confirmation that we biopsied on the right area. So and with this tool we can really predict it and then can say, okay, there's a tumor inside these specimens, and we will can make a tumor diagnosis. Normally, we have to wait 45 minutes, and with that tool, it's much faster. And then, of course, especially in older patients, that's very good because the time of anesthesia can be massively reduced. Also, for the border detection, we have an AI tool. In primary brain tumors, it's very, very difficult to detect the tumor border, and with conventional histopathology, it's nearly not possible because we cannot analyze 4 or 5 or 6 samples because it took really hours. And so, with this automatic tool, we can collect samples from the border, and then the machine tells us, is there some remaining tumor tissue or not? For example, here in green you see, here we are on the safe side, and then it's already, the tumor is removed. And here, for example, with the 90 we see that it's very, that there's still tumor tissue. And then, of course, the surgeon has to decide, can we still remove the tumor tissue or not? Because, for example, here you see this red spot is in the motor tract. So if we would remove that, the patient will have paresis, a weakness. But here in this area, it's outside of the motor region, and still tumor, we could remove it. So that's always the estimation of surgeon. To interpret the results, can we remove it or not? So the final decision has always the surgeon and not the AI. So another example is that we also developed an AI in a multi-center study that can predict also genetic information, molecular information. So that normally takes in the routine clinical practice approximately 3 weeks. that we get results, and that's very important to guide the treatment and then estimate the prognosis. And with this AI, we can predict the molecular markers. That's the main molecular markers relevant for gliomas already after 3 minutes. And then that's very important to maybe modify the surgical strategy to identify the tumors that really benefit from a radical resection, or to find some other tumors that would better benefit from a chemotherapy. And that's always also some additional application that we have now, that we also could implement the fluorescence application also inside this machine. So for the first time, we also can identify fluorescence on cell level. And so if we switch to this fluorescence detection tool, we can really see these fluorescing tumor cells and can better distinguish if there are some tumor cells or not, or maybe that's reactive cells. So that's very important, and so we also analyzed that, and also could identify that we can detect some immune infiltration. That's also very important for the tumor growth and behavior. So, and last, we also developed in a multi-center study ultra-fast analysis. That's the normal AI that we used took us 3 minutes, and now we can analyze the border specimens, for example, in approximately 10 seconds. So that's much faster and with a very high precision. And so we hopefully can now make surgeries faster with that, with this examination, and more precise and more safe. So to summarize, brain tumor surgery is showing enormous development in the last years, especially in new techniques, imaging, diagnostics, novel therapeutic approaches, and of course AI. AI is an important tool in a multimodal approach using multiple techniques, as I showed you during surgery. And due to the improved diagnostic and treatment, the management of brain tumor patients has improved massively in the recent years. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot. So again, we have time for like 2 short questions. Yeah.
Now that you have increased sampling rate, do you take many more samples during the operation? So do you sample much more than in the past, or does it just shorten the time the operation takes?
That's a good question. Before we used this tool, we did not sample so much samples because it took too long until we have the result. And now, with this tool that's so fast, we can really collect, especially the tumor border, up to 6 or 7 samples from different areas, and analyze it directly in the operating room. So, yeah, of course, we always now validate the samples. So every sample that we analyze with the AI, and where we have the result, we send the same sample afterwards to the neuropathology department. So we always have a validation. So we rely on these first results, but in every case, we can really check was it accurate or not, also with the normal histology. So we have more and more samples, but I think it's worse because it's good for the patient, because we can increase the precision and also the safety. Because if you don't have this tool, for example, maybe you remove too much because you don't want to have a residual tumor, and then you have an increased risk of a motor deficit or a speech deficit.
Any other question?
Just a question. I see it in other fields, so I'm wondering how you see it in the future, with, let's say, surgeons becoming more and more relying on AI for even simpler things, where how do you say, like you rely on it too much? That's my question.
If I rely, yeah, I think. Yeah, we rely, and then of course we have to make trust in these techniques, and also, for example, with the pathology department at the beginning, it was yeah, I had to convince also the colleagues because yeah, they maybe have the fear that they will be replaced by some machines, and then more and more they did see it's really a support for them, and now the first question when we do both, they ask me, what did the AI tell you? So it's really, I think we convinced them that it's really a technique that helps us all, and then for us the most important thing is that we have really the best outcome and then the best benefits for the patients.
I think we might come back to that question in the round table. It's very interesting. Then, give it away one more time for Georg.
Thank you.
And we'll proceed. Sorry, I have a part in this as well. So next up will be Yuran Lin. So she has an experience of 12 years in the data science and AI field. And is currently employed with Takeda as a data science associate director, so where she's leading the data transformation and the digitalization and AI pipeline. She's also founder of the podcast Unexpected Data, and she helps with her venture GenieX to organizations to transform privacy regulations towards data-driven innovation. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this talk, and maybe I can help you answer the question of accuracy and trust, because at Takeda, we make sure that all our solutions and application and all the digitalization is really trustworthy, and making sure that the customers or users or business users can trust them and always be in the loop and in control of AI. So today is tomorrow's AI in healthcare is built today. And just before to jump into it, I will just skip that, but just to let you know, I'm French, living in Austria since 2016. I don't speak very great German, so bear with me. And as Florian said already, I have a podcast called Unexpected Data. And if you're willing to have a more storytelling podcast, feel free to jump into it. So, what is Takeda and what is that about? So Takeda is a Japanese company. It has more than 240 years old. And we are in the 4 therapeutic area: oncology, neuroscience, gastroenterology, rare disease, and 2 focus areas, so plasma-derived therapy and vaccines. So what does that mean? It means that we cover everything, and hopefully you never faced us, and I wish that for you. And more particularly in Austria, so we are 4,500 employees, and we are really happy to have a quota of 50-50 female and other type of gender or non-gender people. We are more than 60 nationalities, and I'm also part of I founded one employee resource group, so it's helping you to come as you are at the company. And then we have multiple labels and great awards. And to jump in the core of it, how many of you maybe have faced this problem where everybody from the business says, you know what, there's GenAI, there's ChatGPT, it can answer all my questions. And then you, being a data person, you are like, what? But AI is not your answer for all. And specifically, if you have garbage in, for sure you will have garbage out, right? So at Takeda, we also have this challenge. And what do we do then to solve that? First, we explain what is AI. So AI is very simple. You have data set, you have algorithm, and you need to fine-tune all of that. From it, you have a model, and you can apply it to multiple areas. For example, prediction, recommendation, recognition, or the latest one, generative AI. This is what I call the mosaic arts, meaning that you have what is available already, you kind of break it down, and then you create new things. and new things that maybe nobody thought about, or maybe new things that have no relationship with each other, and also could incorporate new technologies like knowledge graph, things like this. And then, so how to avoid this black hole, this challenge, and this syndrome of shiny object that is happening over there, and also especially not go to the overkill of applying AI everywhere and nowhere. So for that, it's easy. Talk to the people, the business people, the technical people. Make sure that you have the right business fit. Make sure also that you know when it's needed to pivot. Because if you ask GenAI or whatever AI to finish a building where maybe there's no yet a humanoid or a robot to do it, you know that you will go nowhere. And even if you have the best amazing idea in the business or in a company like Takeda, you will not, even if you're the best technical person, you will not go so far and you will not be happy where you are at Takeda. So what do we do then to make our data experts super happy and also be able to nurture their curiosity and their growth is that we have AI labs. We make sure that if you want to try a new algorithm, if you want to try a new library or whatever, that you are not in an environment that touch patient data, healthcare related data, or any personal information from you as an employee or from any people. And therefore, we make sure that you have the possibility to explore and discover in a R&D approach, right? So sometimes you can be willing to experiment and prototype with close to production data. This is why we make sure that we have pseudonymized data or encrypted data. And also we make sure that you have synthetic data to make sure that, you can play around. And if, for example, you have new ideas that we didn't think about, you also have the possibility to do that in this AI lab in a more startup way. And in Takeda, we also have some kind of fundraising approach. So you can also submit your idea and the highest leadership team could provide you some fundings that you can do on your own. And on the other side, what is good to have an AI lab is that what you may be working on as a project, I'm not working on it. So why not share our GitHub notebooks or repository, and we can collaborate on your methodology, how you solve this problem, and how I also did something that maybe you could get inspired with. And then we also want to do what is the best for the company, meaning that at Takeda, we have a lot of data. Not only data that we generate, but data with the hospitals, data with the patient, data from clinical trial and everything like this. But how do you make sure that you can utilize this data? We created data products. This means that these are reusable data in a quality and secure way that you could reuse it. What does that mean? It means that we make sure that, for example, your smartwatch data related to your heartbeat, the speed of your heartbeat and all of your rhythms of the heartbeat. If it's stored somewhere, we want to make sure that data governance, data management is all aligned among different brands of smartwatch, for example. We make sure that you have also the collaboration with the business to understand what does that really mean, I also want to highlight that I don't have a medical background, but I work in a pharma and healthcare company. So I really have this crucial need to always talk to those medical experts and ask them, what does that mean? I don't even understand what is maybe oncology, such a high-level word. So explain it to me. Because when you have the meaning of that, you can then create a domain-oriented data product or data warehouse or something like this, where other data scientists can use, but also business colleagues could use, because they maybe not be needing a full-blown LLM model, but they just need a little KPI, and therefore they can use that. And then having those type of data product, make sure that you are not, always needed to do stat descriptive or realign all the meanings or cleaning and making a master data table for your work, because it's already there, right? So you are also saving costs to the whole company. And then if you have already components related to the data that is user-centric, you can already share that. For example, front-end applications, streamlined application, things like this. And then you are contributing to the collective knowledge of the data. And another thing is also that we want to do good for the society. Therefore, at Takeda, we have created the Takeda Ethics Advisory Committee, which is composed of internal and external, very renowned ethics colleagues. And here they are advising for emerging ethics topics. They developed and also guide us in our ethics guidelines. And if it's needed, they also play the devil advocate and tell us, like, this can go wrong. What can go wrong? This is the most important, because in healthcare, we really make a high golden point to guarantee quality, security, trust. And if we cannot do that, then it's useless to be in this environment or this industry. And then when you know what can go wrong, you can tackle those complex ethical challenges with AI, sometimes without AI, but sometimes mostly with AI. And then with such a type of committee, we make sure that we are also renowned. We make sure that we don't stop at GDPR. We make sure that actually we create innovation out of that. So now let's jump into the more practical part. How do we simplify, let's say, this complex regulation to make sure that we guarantee high quality of the product, or also how we want to do R&D? So with PwC Germany, we created a chatbot assistant where, I don't know about you, but sometimes for law or for what I can get as a support, even financially in Vienna, I don't know what it's about and I don't know what to look for. And sometimes it's in a legal term that I don't understand. So imagine that multiplied by millions, billions time in the healthcare industry. And you, as an individual, you need to automatize that. But on the other side, you also need to make sure that everybody is compliant with such a regulation. So this AI-powered chatbot was having a lot of documents that are for sure regulated and verified and also audited. And this AI was here to extract the knowledge and also to make the summarization. What is about the implementation? So it was a simple RAG architecture. And as you can imagine, it can be having hallucinations, it can be having a bad performance and accuracy. Therefore, we also conducted a lot of workshop with the expert, making sure that the user is never trusting 100% this output coming from the LLM or the AI chatbot. But still, we had 50% reduction in deviation. Deviation means you have a specific process to follow with specific steps, and a deviation is when you are not following those specific steps and it doesn't go as planned and as expected, right? And if you have a deviation in the healthcare industry, you need to close those deviations, understand why is it happening, close them, and resolve them in less than 30 days, right? And counting weekends, public days and everything, right? So you can imagine that nobody wants deviations, and if you can reduce that by 50%, it's already a win, let's say. And then using AI, making sure that you translate that and summarize that in everyday or human language, make sure that everybody was adhering to such a regulation. And then if you have everybody adhering to that, having less deviation, then the team, ethics and compliance, were super happy. So that was great. Then another point is we have collaboration with MIT, where we have 22 projects happening. We work, for example, on visual inspection. So at Takeda in Vienna, we produce some product that comes into glass containers, and inside you have a liquid that you can use for in operations if the patient needs to have the blood a little bit more fluid, let's say. And you also have some vaccines that are produced in Vienna. So visual inspection means that you want to make sure that the container, which is in glass, has no fracture, has no imperfection, and also that inside the liquid there's no abnormal particle or abnormal elements that could go into the body of a patient, right? So With MIT, for example, we have put sensors that can take pictures for each and every glass container which has the product, and we used visual inspection models, making sure that we classify them with the help of a human, but also making sure that we use forward diffusion and reverse diffusion to analyze those data. You can imagine that visual inspection with such a diverse quantity of image of product in glass with different solutions, with the need to go at the molecular level to find particle, it's super hard. So you can use technique to check the accuracy, but the human is at the end the best that we have for the moment. And then you can think about collaboration with MIT for clinical trials. So how do you make sure that you have the best prediction if you have a distance clinical trial with wearables, and how can you predict if this clinical trial, new medication or things that you want to test will be in the defavor of the patient. So if you can predict that ahead of time, you can stop the clinical trial for this specific patient and make sure that it's not endangering this patient. And then how do you make sure that you also wrap all the clinical data in the fastest way and also write the clinical data authority report in a way that it's not cumbersome for you? This AI also is helping there. And then continuing on AI, I wanted to talk also about this clinical trial where you need to have 10,000 papers that you need to read, because clinical trial is still very manual. And after reading all of that, you need to write a report, send it to the authority like FDA. And usually, it takes 20 weeks approximatively. So you can imagine that if you use AI and an in-house Gen AI solution, you are automatizing that. You are not anymore using 20 weeks, but 10 weeks. And here it's quite easy. Use NLP, making sure that you are synthesizing, summarizing the information, and also focus on very specific part. Why I say focus on very specific part, it's because manufacturing, healthcare, all this area is super regulated. So sometimes it's less easy to bring this new innovation, like Georg said. So if you focus on small part, it could be your, a little ambassador output to automatize the rest. And therefore, focusing on the most challenging or on the part that could provide you the biggest win and the quickest win, you are therefore summarizing, for example, 70 pages in 2 sentences with high accuracy, and everybody understood what you were talking about. But none of that will make sense if you don't have values, if we are not driven by values. And at Takeda, and for me personally, why I also stay at Takeda, is because our journey moving forward, and especially in AI, is driven by values. So we're here from people to people, because those patients that you see in the room, in the hospital, or at the doctor's waiting room, it can be you, it can be the member of your family, it can be a close friend of yours, and therefore we need to make sure that we are devoted. Doesn't mean that you don't have work-life balance, but it really means that you want to bring the best impact. And also, as you can see, I'm a woman, not speaking German, also coming from France, so we also make a high point to bring diversity because the patients are diverse, right? And then from good to better health. It's not, the goal is not only to cure the disease that is there. The goal is also to make sure that you can have a normal life, although you have a disease that is not yet curable, right? So this is an information that is important to keep in mind if you want to work at Takeda, at least. And then...
Sorry. Oops. Just 5 more minutes, please.
Yeah, it's okay, I finished. It's my last slide. So, and then from today to tomorrow, you are today building the medication for tomorrow. Maybe your niece, nephews, or children will be benefiting from it. So it's always important to think about how you can redefine what is the best. How can you redefine also the ever-changing landscape by bringing trustworthy security and accuracy in the mind of everybody. That's all from my side. I don't have a summary page, but I guess you got it. Everything is driven by what you are believing as a value. And if you want to know more about Takeda, feel free to keep in touch with me.
Thank you very much. I think those are the values which most companies try to implement AI now by. So, any questions?
Thank you very much for the great talk. I see you develop so many products with Gen AI inside, and they work in a lot of very important areas. How do you tackle problem of testing of efficiency and precision and quality of what this thing produce? I understand there's a lot of matters like human in the loop, but it's very inefficient and costly, and maybe you already developed a specific strategy to address this?
So I guess it's maybe famous, like for everybody, you have little sample of data, you test it, you torture it, and then you try out in a simulated world. And then for sure you need to have this simulated world in the real world. And then you try it out here. And this is the scary part, because if in this simulated real world elements it's not working, then you have the feedback directly from the human or the person that is working there, or in your data directly, right? We cannot do like the bank or somewhere else because we're dealing with life. So this is more or less the technique that we have. You do the normal testing that you know in data science, engineering, and then you try to replicate it in the world that is real. For example, in manufacturing or the visual inspection, you have a specific machine where you feed, for example, the product that has the defect, and you know it has the defect, so you have a ground truth, and you feed it in to see if it will give you what you're expecting or not, and then you go on from there to improve it. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. It's really great to see how a bigger company like Takeda tackles AI. So one thing that is still unclear to us is how you guys approach biases, because from what I saw, there was only one model you guys used, which was the Takeda GPT.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you, when the users use your thing, how you guys tackle biases instead of just using one model, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, first, how we tackle bias is first we have a group of human beings in one room. And if I feel that this is not helping me as a person with my identity, with my background, I just shout it out. You know, like, yeah, we need to play the devil advocate to shout it out. And then when you see in the data, that there is some skewed data in one way or another, you also raise it up. You cannot override data that is there, and you cannot also close eyes on data that are not there. So for example, there are many clinical trials that is not focused towards female patients, and therefore it's also our responsibility as data scientists to say, hey, in this data set, there's nothing about female. It's weird. Can we think about it? Is there just because I was not made aware of it and the data is there, or it is because we don't have the data and therefore we need to move on to get those data, collect those data. Such an example can happen even right now.
Satisfied?
I mean,
yeah.
I cannot give you, there's no like a framework how to do that, right? It's at the end, the bias, it's first subjective. And if you feel that it's biased, you need to raise it up. This is why we have a committee, ethics committee. This is why we have an AI lab. This is why we have data product. So everybody, and everybody, really everybody at Takeda is empowered to raise the voice to say where the bias is.
Then, yeah, thank you very much again for the talk, and give it away one more time. Pretty done. So last but not least, of course, we'll continue with Georg Langs, So he is a full professor for machine learning in medical imaging at the Department of Biomedical Imaging and Image-Guided Therapy at Medical University. He is also head of the section Computational Image Researching Lab, the CIR, which is a very interdisciplinary research unit. And he's the co-founder and chief scientist of Context Flow, which most of you might have heard of. So as soon as setup is done.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for a very kind introduction. And thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot, Wolf, for organizing this and the entire Vienna Data Science Group and everybody involved. So my name is Georg Langs, and I'd like to talk a bit about how kind of the research part and the application part in medicine of machine learning is interlinked. And I'll show you some examples where we'll maybe recognize Georg in the operating theater. And if I would have given this talk maybe 2 or 3 years ago, then I would have talked about how we are all working very hard to eventually kind of move machine learning into the clinic, move it into the actual routine care of patients. But I think right now that just has happened. And so Georg talked about examples where machine learning in the operating theater changes a lot about what you can do during neurosurgery. On the right-hand side, I show an example in radiology where it essentially changes a lot about what you can quantify and grasp and replicably know about the patient and also track about the patient when they are going through a disease and going through treatment. And that helps on the one hand side to sometimes just be more accurate, be maybe more confident if you haven't seen these types of diseases very often. But very often it also changes the role of radiology. And then many of the conversations are starting with, oh, is it kind of the radiologist against the AI? And I think that's also over. Right now, there is a lot of thinking going on in radiology and oncology and surgery about how the roles of these diagnostic fields change in informing treatment decisions and informing patient management decisions. And so from my my background is technical, and I think machine learning can help in many regions, but I think one is informing these treatment decisions, predicting what might happen to a patient if we take all of the observations that we can make at a certain time point, and if we have a couple of treatment options, if we have a couple of management options open, and we would like to decide which of them is the best. And I think machine learning can really help here by taking the data that we have and trying to predict a little bit. And I think we are still struggling very much to do that well, but I think we are also seeing results that shows that there is that's a good direction, that's a promising direction where machine learning is making steps towards being able to do that. The second area, and you talked about that, is that machine learning, I think, is now also moving into the field of creating new therapy options, right? Not only if I have therapy options in a patient, what should I do, but also what might be the next step in treating patients better. And that can range from being a bit more accurate to quantifying in clinical trials how the treatment cohort differs from the placebo cohort. But I think we are also seeing a first set of results where we see that it might be a good tool to look at this very heterogeneous, and we talked about biases, so the very heterogeneous, diverse patient population that is coming by during routine treatment, and say, well, hang on, there are a couple of groups of patients that behave in a certain way that might be linked to a specific molecular mechanism that might be a target for a new treatment. And I'd like to show you a couple of examples, because one of the big insights that I had, but I think it's not really new, others had it before me, is that this idea of doing the method work, wrapping up the method, handing it over, and then somebody applies the method successfully is just not a very effective approach in this context. And the main reason is that all of these methods that are developed and then just taken over and applied, they really don't work at the beginning. And so it's much more kind of a cycle of being embedded in the application, working a lot with, so we work a lot with Georg and other clinicians to figure out what's the real problem that we can solve and how we should actually change our methods or what new methods are necessary in order to tackle them. And that's now a very shameless plug for something that we are doing at medical universities. So Georg and me and a couple of others got together over the last year or so, and we thought, well, there are many groups at Medical University, about I think 20 by now, in immunology, surgery, radiology, pathology, dermatology, all over the place, that are trying to solve specific clinical problems with machine learning. And right now, we basically, in this group that got together and met quite regularly over the last year, discussing, kind of helping each other, we figured out that we need kind of some way of bringing the students, the postdocs, all of them together, and we convinced the university to create a new center that will open on the 4th of June. So if you want, come by and have a look at the Science Slam that we are organizing there, where all of these groups will very briefly present what's their vision of the future. And the idea here is that we bring all of these groups together, put them together. They're still anchored in their clinical fields, but they're also sitting in the same place, so that all the students, all the master students, PhD students, postdocs, clinicians can talk to each other and can interact. Because I think a lot of exciting things happen, in my experience, not so much if I have a meeting with the head of immunology, but they are really happening when the master students from computer science and the PhD students from medical sciences sit in the same office for half a year and have a lot of coffee and talk about what they would like to do. And so let me give you a couple of examples. The first thing that I'm really excited about and that we are excited about, I think in this set, is how we can take real life data and learn from it about what will happen to patients based on what we can observe in the patients. And real life data looks like that. So that's an example of a group of patients who all of them had surgery for a lung tumor. So that's the green point. And every line is a patient. And this point, and I admit it's a very dry visualization, like all of these points are either lab tests or CTs. And you see that it's a very irregular plot. So there is no kind of clear system, except maybe that all of them got some imaging before they got into the surgery. But we also see things that these are the time points when these patients died, and this is the time point of the last lab test, right? So that's an example where you need some quality control in the data in order to kind of figure out what's really happening. But this is the data that we are looking at, because we believe that we learn something from looking at this heterogeneity. And now let me give you a couple of examples. One thing that we've learned is that this is a lung, kind of over 1.5 years, and that lung, that's a patient that is suffering from fibrosis. And fibrosis and all of the interstitial lung diseases are complex diseases because there are also about 200 or more of them. And they change the lung in various specific ways that are kind of hard to recognize. And when you think about it, when you're coming from machine learning, maybe the reason why these different types of disease patterns that you see in the lung are hard to recognize is maybe we're looking for the wrong thing, right? So they have names like honeycombing and milk glass or ground glass, and they are all kind of names of patterns that are very much motivated by the need that one doctor has to talk about this pattern to another doctor, and then you need a name for the pattern. But maybe that's not the best way to describe what's happening in the lung. And so we can use machine learning techniques like unsupervised learning to figure out, well, what are the patterns that are occurring in these large patient populations? And are some of these patterns kind of exhibiting very consistent change behavior over time? And do they allow us to get something like a group model of how these different diseases progress, and also where, at which point these progressions of the diseases change? And I think the thing that we see over and over again in different applications is that the first thing that you think about is, can I use that for one patient? So can I say, well, if it's going this way, that's a high-risk patient, and if it's going this way, then there's a low-risk patient, right? So I can say something about, if I have applied a treatment, well, it's going this or that way, it's starting to work, it's not starting to work, and I think that's really helpful, and I think a good aim, and something that we still work on getting really on the road. But I think the second thing that we can do once we are able to quantify what's happening in the imaging data is that we are able to look at large patient populations and see patterns, right? So one thing that you can do is, when you're looking at many of these patients and see how the disease progresses, how tissue transforms from healthy tissue to other tissue, you can start to think about the pathways, think about these change trajectories of tissue and how the patients go through them. And you can look at points in this journey that might be good points for intervention, because there is a bifurcation. Some of them go the long road, some of them go the very quick progression to very heavy disease. And so machine learning here gives us a tool for quantifying, for prediction, for telling maybe it's the difference between a placebo cohort and a real treatment cohort. But I think they're also always giving us some way of starting a new discussion, a new search, or a new investigation into the mechanics of this disease. And this goes on the macro level, that also helps us on the microscopy level. So this is histology data. You've already seen it in Georg's talk. And there the question is, well, again, is there more than we know right now? So we know something about this patient with this tumor. We know, did they survive long? Did they respond to a certain treatment? Is the overall composition of this tumor a certain kind of molecular composition? But we don't know what the different regions in this tumor are. And we can use machine learning to have this very kind of weakly supervised goal of saying, well, somewhere in this tumor there is something. And if you have enough samples, that allows us to eventually figure out where the regions are that are responsible for high risk, where the regions are that are associated with a specific molecular marker. And so I think that's an example where machine learning does not only replicate what we can do and just makes it faster or more accurate, but it really helps us to see something that we were not able to see before in the data, because it can look at a lot of data at the same time and look for common patterns and look for kind of things that they share. And that leads me to my last example about the research part, and that is a study that we did together with Georg and Heidi Wöhre, whom you also saw in the video before. She's coordinating the Austrian Brain Tumor Registry, and that is basically a registry where all of the tumor patients are recorded so that we have a view on these diseases, which is really important because the individual brain tumor types are essentially very often very rare. And so it's important to kind of look at all of the patients to get enough patients in your observation viewpoint, so to say, so that you can say something meaningful about them. And so this is basically all of the patients who get central nervous system primary lymphoma. And the idea or the question was, which of these patients are low-risk patients, so which of them will kind of live for quite a long time, might respond well to the treatment, and which of them are high-risk patients. And you can do machine learning and things that I think many of you know, like look into features, look into convolutional neural networks, look into scoring systems that try to learn from the data which features in the imaging data are responsible for high risk and which are for low risk. And it turns out that that's possible, and you can actually create a risk score that is very predictive. So you're able to say a lot from looking at these patients. And again, that's helpful, but I think the maybe more important thing is that for some of these patients, not for all, we also had epigenomics data. So we had some sequencing data that came out of the tumor, and it told us something about the methylation kind of behavior of the DNA in these tumors. And this methylation behavior is very, very closely linked to the progression of the tumor, to the dynamics that are kind of playing out in the tumor. And by linking these two observations, by looking at, well, these are phenotypical directions that kind of are associated with risk, and they are kind of associated with certain directions in the space that is representing the methylation behavior of these tumors, you can start to look at, well, are there certain locations on the DNA that pop up very often or that are corresponding to directions in this embedding that are associated with high risk, and then say, well, maybe this is a good target for a targeted therapy. And in this study, and that was very new to me and very kind of, I learned a lot because that was the first time that we created a machine learning result, and someone started to do an in vitro experiment with real tumor cells to check whether the DNA, whether the gene that we did identify with the machine learning method was actually a good target for targeted therapy. And as far as in vitro goes, that kind of was confirmed. So one last example, I forgot about that, is that we are now talking about diseases that we know, right? We know brain tumors, we know specific lung diseases, but sometimes it's also about discovering new diseases. And one of that is, of course, in kind of being prepared for pandemics. And we are right now in a project together with the United Nations, with the IAEA, and they are concerned with creating basically the capability to be better prepared for the next upcoming pandemic. So we know it will come, we know it will start somewhere, and we know that there are two things that we really kind of did not well during the last one. And the first one was, it took a while until we recognized that it's there, right? So, and the recognition that it's there happened in the clinic. And the second one is, once it was there, we really sucked at sharing data very quickly to create good prediction models that could guide treatment. And so in this project that is led by the IEA, the aim is to create a big observatory, which is essentially a data repository that is linked to different clinics around the world in order to collect data and in the first phase make this data available to the research community. So we would like to sample data that was recorded before COVID and during COVID to see how fast we can be at recognizing this point when the new disease was there and how we can learn prediction models from this very chaotic in the initial phase of the first couple of months when nobody was really knowing what they were doing. How can we train prediction models based on that? How can we detect scores or create scores to tell us, is there a new disease that we haven't seen before or not? All right, so that's, I think, for me at least, a couple of examples that show that a lot of what we do in research is very closely interlinked with application. And it's not this sequence, we do research, we wrap it up, and then we start with the application. But we have a lot of applications running in the hospital that are still in a research phase and that are kind of continually improved while they are used, because there is a lot of conversations between, there are a lot of conversations between clinicians and machine learning researchers. And so the second part of the talk, I'd like to pick out one example and tell a bit about what it means to bring something like that into the clinic. And Wolf also suggested that I talk a bit about context flow and how that went from research to the clinic, so I'll do that. Very briefly, I think there are a couple of application areas in the clinic and especially in radiology, so like AI is touching workflow reconstruction, automation, quantification, also kind of starting to integrate different areas like imaging and laboratory medicine, molecular diagnostics. And the three reasons why it is being picked up in the clinic are very often quantification and efficiency, right? So you're saving a little bit of time. You can quantify something that you could not quantify before. The second point is quality, which is essentially saying, again, I can make a better treatment decision. And the last thing is that people, and especially insurances who ultimately pay for healthcare, are thinking about what does that change on the systems level. And I'd like to show you a couple of examples with that and then illustrate that with context flow. And I think 3 minutes are left. So regarding efficiency, I think similar to the example that Georg showed, this is an example out of our lab together with the MR Center, and Wolfgang Bogner was really in lead here. So there is a technique that is called magnetic resonance spectroscopy, which is essentially using magnetic resonance in order to quantify the presence of certain metabolites in the imaging data. And that's really critical when you want to know something about a tumor or the environment of a tumor. And the problem with the spectroscopy is that it's taking about 13 hours to reconstruct the imaging data from the data that you get in the scanner. So it's 13 hours. And that's the reason why it's just a pure research application. And what you can do with deep learning is you can essentially replace this traditional standard kind of reconstruction approach with one go deep learning network that reconstructs from the sensor data to the actual imaging data in a span of about 5 minutes, right? So you have reduced 13 hours to 5 minutes. And that not only means that it's a little bit faster, but it really means that it switches from a research application to an actual clinically applicable application. And with that, in the last 2 minutes, I'd like to talk a bit about context flow, because that was also something that I'm personally very excited about, because it also made this switch from kind of being a research project where we looked into how can we search for similar patients in large patient populations, how can we quantify it. Right now, it's about 35 people in the team of context flow. One number that I'm most excited about, it's about 25,000 patients who are analyzed with this tool every month in clinical routine. So it's installed in clinical hospitals. It's used as part of clinical routine, kind of in 15 countries across Europe. And they're using it in order to say something about what is happening in the lung of these patients. And so they're using it to look at nodules, so detect kind of little nodules that are candidates for possibly being cancer. They are looking at it, using it in order to track these nodules, to say, well, this is how my patient looks right now. but that's the past of the patient. And so even if this is a big nodule, this nodule has been stable over the last 2 years, while this nodule, while it's not super big, it has grown quite a lot. And so it tells us a bit more about what's happening in the lung of these patients, and a bit more about kind of quantifying what's there in a way that can be used in tumor boards, that can be given to patients, but it really informs the treatment decisions. But one thing that we've learned lately, and this is my last point that I'd like to make, is that when you then ask, well, you want it in the clinic, people ask, we want it in the clinic, we pay for something, but eventually, if there is value, insurances should be paying for it. And the reason why insurances pay for it are essentially they make a calculation and say, well, does that change anything about what happens to the patient later on? Does any patient change the course because of these softwares? Does some of them go into, let's say, not go into biopsy because we know it's not a malignant tumor? Do some of them are picked out from those patients that are sent home for a year and said, no, you should go to biopsy right now in order to check that tumor up? And so there we are looking at studies like these where we say, well, we have a couple of guidelines that are used in clinical practice to decide whether that's a low-risk patient and high-risk patients, and we can use software to kind of readjust these guidelines. And I think that is where the discussion is right now in the clinical field. We have guidelines for many of these diseases and patient management systems. Can we kind of reroute some of these patients into maybe higher maintenance or lower maintenance because of software and spare them a biopsy with risks? Or can we route some of them into treatment a bit earlier because it would be beneficial to do that earlier and we recognize it? And with that, I'm at the end. Thanks a lot for the attention, and I'm looking forward for questions. And shameless plug again, so if you want to come to the opening 4th of June.
Thanks a lot for the amazing talk. It's always interesting to see what's going on and also how it can be presented and visualized. Obviously, like how the storytelling of the whole thing happens at your institute especially. Maybe very short 2 questions or short answers. I have to look into your direction.
Thank you. So I just want to ask about the project on detecting emerging diseases. So you told like there you are actually connecting with different clinics around the world. So my question is quite a bit similar to the previous one, like how you guys are managing bias in this case, because it's like we have geographical biases and some portion of the world represent a bigger population. So how you guys are doing that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first of all, I mean, when you look at the country map, which countries are involved in the project as those centers that are involved, you see that they are not the typical suspects in Europe and US. So they are kind of countries where typically we see not as much activity in terms of machine learning and so on. And so I think one thing is important that they are involved in kind of sharing the data among themselves with this project. But I think the second thing that we are trying to do is to also involve the machine learning research community in these countries, right? So not only involve the countries and the clinics and kind of get the data and we do the research, but involve them in the research as well. Because some of these, they're all universities, and so there is a lot of activity happening there, but that needs boosts like kind of this shared repository of data where you can actually do the research. And I think it's still, even if that's a great plan, it's a lot of that is in the implementation of that plan. Because also if you're in these countries, of course there is a big gradient in these countries, right? And so the big international university that's representative of the entire country. And so I think that is something that we basically have to be aware of and have to work on to avoid that. But I think if I would choose one strategy in order to avoid bias, and it's definitely not kind of, it solves everything, but involving as many of those countries or as many of those communities in the actual research, because making them part of the research, I think, is one way in making sure that their kind of their knowledge about what could go wrong goes into the research.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is on the last slide. There is a mention about the interval range, right, around 35%. Can you just explain that? Yeah, this one, 33 to 45.
Yes. Sorry, so I was very quick with that. But basically, so these are, like every square is one patient, and the color basically tells you the risk score based on the established guidelines, which takes the size, basically the size and shape of the tumor into account, or of the nodule into account. Okay. Right? The bigger and irregular, the more you are on the high risk side. And these are basically the numbers of patients, and this is one of the populations that were in the study. So it was, I think, going over 3 different areas in US and Canada that are, we would route you into either going into PET imaging or going into biopsy based on the size of the tumor. But if I use machine learning in order to analyze the tumor, which essentially tells me something about the heterogeneity within the tumor, I will downgrade you to just have a follow-up scan in a year or half a year. Right, so this is the reduction of biopsies on a population level, on a population level who do have nodules that you would kind of cause by the use of the software. And then you have another group of patients that you would, so to say, upgrade. And upgrading can mean different things, right? So from go home and come back in a year to have a CT in 3 months to you got a CT, but now let's do the biopsy to be sure, basically. So this is about these percentage points, about what changes in these patients.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just looking at the time, I think we need to proceed. Give it away one more time for Georg Langs.
Everybody's sitting down now. Very good. First row always empty. Natural law, I think. Okay. So after this short break, we are running a bit late. So I will try to speed it up a bit because yes, there is some buffet and socializing afterwards, and we are fighting against that. We know, but no, there will be nothing to eat before we finish. So just to make sure that we are all on the same side here. So thanks again for the really awesome talks. Now I would like to open the floor a bit for a bit deeper conversations. I think we already had some interesting questions from the crowd. But what I would like to do is I want to touch on research, on real-world applications, a bit on business, and also maybe, let's hope we can do that a bit on the personal journey behind all of you. So let's start. Let's start with a bit the big picture. AI is moving fast, life sciences, well, I don't know if it's moving fast, but the combination, hopefully. But often I have the feeling, and also some questions, and also you hinted at it, the pace of research outstrips the adaptation a bit. So that's at least what I got a bit. So what do you see, and I talk to all of you, is there one biggest barrier, or multiple ones, I don't know, to moving these cool tools from AI, from data science, machine learning, from research into clinical use? And what can we do as academics, industry, and so on to close that gap?
Yeah, I have a little bit the advantage that I can go from the other side, because when I went to San Francisco and to United States during my research stay, I already got in touch with a startup company in the Silicon Valley that already developed such a device that was CE certified. And so had the advantage that I really could implement that relatively fast in the operating room. So for me, the greatest barrier was then with the administration and then also with the trust. So at the beginning, the pathologists were very skeptic. Is it a good thing, or are we too slow? Because that's much faster. And so I think that's really very important at the beginning to convince all disciplines and then that are involved. And I think then you have really a big success if you have everybody in boat and then make it together. And so now I go back to the AI specialist then with this tool. And we have a close cooperation with Georg, as he already told, that we're doing analysis together and develop new AI approaches that hopefully can be implemented in routine clinical practice very soon.
So what I understand is you had a bit of a head start being in San Francisco. So again, Silicon Valley is teaching us. So maybe Georg, I know the journey of context flow a bit, and what I got is you didn't have this head start.
No, I think like so the things that eventually made it work. I think you need people who have the clinical background, who have the clinical need, who are really excited about it, and who are at the beginning a bit how to say patient. Because, well, you have this software and you have the algorithm and you have the classifier, but you need to wiggle a bit until it kind of fits exactly the problem that they need to be solved, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes speed isn't really an issue, and sometimes you can tell them a classification result that they already know anyway at that point when they're doing the imaging. And so finding that right point where they really say, oh, that makes a big difference, that happens only, I think, after you have worked with them and after they tried it out. And so you need clinicians who are willing to try it out, even though they don't know immediately what it gives them, to be patient and to kind of experiment a bit and kind of trusting that eventually you will hit this sweet spot where it will actually bring an advantage, and then you can basically replicate. But at the beginning, I think as a startup, you really need basically a lot of friends in the sense kind of people from clinic users who say, well, I know you're a startup, I know it's at the beginning, I know it doesn't work 100%, but let's just try it out and let's just work with it. And together with them, then you bring it to a status where you can roll it out and also bring it to people who just say, well, I'd only like to have it if I have an advantage immediately.
So what I understand is you say, well, it's the good old human side again. Yeah. So the human connections, the people who believe in that, we are willing to push for it.
Yeah.
Did I get that correct? Okay. Very interesting. Judan, I mean, we are talking here about AKH is not a small company, let's put it like that. But again, compared to Takeda, maybe a bit smaller. It's a global company with complex data, and I'm pretty sure there are pretty strict regulations worldwide about it. At the same time, you try to lead the transformation. I mean, you talked about it. How do you balance that there? So you talked about it, innovation and regulatory constraints. Can it even coexist to be agile and compliant? I mean, it's a bit. Isn't that a bit against each other?
It's totally not against each other because, like my colleague said, you need sponsors to believe in your new innovation. Going agile, making sure that you're tackling and showing the evidence that your new innovation is actually working, is kind of bringing your disruptor being your first and prime sponsors, right? So this is why it's working. And yes, the human factor is really important, but also the fact that the technical people and the business people or the researcher people need to work together. As I told you, I don't have a medical background, but when I understand something really great, and when we have a team of get going or go-getter, and also a team that is super diverse, you can say what in the room is not covered, and also what in the room people didn't tend to bring it to the surface, and therefore you can tackle them ahead of time and get even more sponsors. This is how it's happening at Takeda.
So you mean it's somehow a chain reaction?
Yes.
In a positive way.
Yeah, and agile way is that, right? You tackle a little piece, you try to go from point A to B with something very simple, and then from the feedback of this really simple solution to get from point A to point B, then you scale up by having iterative feedback, iterative also deliverable on the innovation, and this is what is happening. And if there is a regulation or GXP element that is not covered, you didn't release it. So no live touch, and it's okay.
I see. We talk now a lot about human side. I mean, at the moment we haven't talked about technology that much, which is interesting in itself. But let's stay on that human side, and let's change a bit now, maybe to, let's say, business, industry, innovation a bit. When we see that AI is changing roles in a lot of areas, responsibilities, career paths, and I don't know what the pathologists will do in 20 years. I mean, maybe they don't know as well. They have maybe a feeling or fear about that. But what's your take on what new skills or roles do you think will emerge in the next years due to this integration of new tools? Just sometimes tools, or maybe even more research or innovation in healthcare. Will there be a change, or is it gradual? What do you think? Will there really be new roles here, or is it just like integration into existing roles, which also can will it make it faster that the pathologist, will be like one pathologist will do the work of two, or will it be really different?
I can start. Yeah. So as you saw, Takeda tackle rare disease. So it means that in the lifetime of a doctor, it can be that this doctor meets once in the lifetime a patient that has this specific disease, right? So Takeda is here to provide the information about this disease to this doctor that have seen this disease only in one lesson in the medical study, right? So those type of new solution, those type of new job that from Takeda's side is here to, for example, have a prompting engineer, data scientists, people that could be really fluent into the business understanding and the technical part, and really, being curious of those two words interconnected with each other. This is the new type of job that will rise. I cannot say a specific title or role about that, but I'm pretty sure that those people that are continuous learning, improving their own growth personally in the area that has no barrier between the medical area or the clinical area and the technical area, those are the ones who will thrive.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on this, Georgs?
Yeah, for my field, I also think there will be a shift, and I also see a shift as we need very experienced people in AI that are really can handle these machines during surgery and pathology. So that's very important that we have, for example, we need now more technicians that can handle such machines during surgery, that really can interpret also the data, know the functions, can do the analysis. And also, in other fields we use some robotic systems, so that are AI guided and then based. So also we need here experienced technicians, and of course, we need data science analysts and then AI specialists like Georg. So that's why we are very happy to have this cooperation to develop new techniques and new AI tools that are really based on our clinical needs. So I think there will be a lot of shift in the next years. With people are working in this area.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to add something?
No, I just maybe one observation that I made, and again, like I'm coming from a technical background and so learned a lot about medicine, but one thing was that, so initially I thought about kind of, okay, how will AI change medicine? But I think there are so many things happening within medicine that are just changing, right? So like the role of pathology and molecular pathology, and then they start to do mass spectroscopy. So there's a lot of technology emerging that changes pathology and changes the relationship between radiology and laboratory medicine and pathology, because all of them are constantly trying to contribute to the diagnosis and to the decisions, but the tools that they have changed, and also the kind of the relevance of some fields changes, and the relevance of some particular kind of sub fields maybe just becomes obsolete, becomes something else emerges. And so I think it's not that AI, maybe not AI is the big kind of factor that changes everything, but everything is very much in how do you say, like volatile, I feel, in how they play together to contribute to decisions. And I think there's also kind of a bit of a competition between fields. And so AI is kind of adding to that. And maybe it's a catalyst, maybe it's something that fields start to use in order to kind of get more out of their data, but maybe it's also something that kind of helps us to link some of this data, right? So by hand, I have no idea, well, me definitely not, but I think also clinicians have no idea looking at a DNA sequence and looking at an MR image and kind of making sense of those two together, but that's something where you can only do something when you have machine learning or algorithms.
What I hear now is for sure that new techniques, not only AI, but also other, come up and are used for it. More or different people with different skill sets are often needed because the machine's getting more complicated, or let's say the need for working together, for collaboration between different disciplines is maybe getting bigger, because the overlap sometimes is now bigger, or people are maybe starting for the first time talking to each other. I don't know, but that's up to you. And that brings me to now the really business side a bit, because actually, yeah, cross collaboration, different use cases. You're working for a very, very big company. We have seen a few of the use cases. What separates, in your opinion, additionally to what you've said, the human factor and so on, the really successful initiatives from the not so successful ones now, and what do you see in the future emerging? I mean, Georg just talked about that in the clinical setting. You say it's a bit nearly a competition at the moment between different areas. Is it similar at Takeda? So something coming up and say, hey, that was not so important before, but now it is.
I mean, it can always happen, this is for sure. But it's not bad to try to investigate multiple areas, discover, experiment, prototype in multiple areas. The thing that is not good is to persist when you see repetition of fail, right? This is the important element, is you have a target, you see something is falling once, twice, then it's time to let go, right? You need the bandwidth for something else. And for sure, from a technology side, it's always important to combine multiple areas. For example, data science is great, but knowledge graph is great, quantum computing is also great, and the three together, you can do even greater things. So this is where it's important to focus on, right?
To not lose focus.
Yes.
Understand. So coming from a big company to a bit of a smaller one, you talked a lot about context flow, Georg, and you talked about that the human side was so important for developing it, but maybe for other people here, being in research in general, maybe even in life science or AI research, do you want to give our audience some lessons, additional ones, how to translate this into really a viable business, something which works and maybe even earns money. I mean, I don't know that. Maybe you don't want to go into that much. What would you tell someone now trying to start this path you are now going for 10 years, isn't it? Okay, that's quite a lot, and you have survived. That means something.
So, I mean, I definitely have only a very narrow view on what we did, right? But one thing that we did actually, and I think INiTS is in the room, so INiTS was a big factor in making it
INiTS,
possible.
standing up, Peter, please. Yeah, thank you.
So, INiTS was a big factor because like at the beginning of the company, we basically got into a competition where the first prize was spending 3 months with INiTS. And the factor of that was basically that they gave us a kick in the backside to say, well, sit down and first of all, hands off the keyboard, don't do any more coding, because we had lots of ideas how to improve the algorithms. Just sit down and try to think about things like who might buy the product, with whom should you talk to figure out what they actually need, and kind of guided us through these first couple of steps. I think that was a big factor. But then the other big factor was that with INiTS, but also with I2C, which is, I think, a fantastic thing that you have at Technical University, we got in touch with others who had done it 2 years before us or 5 years before us, and they shared a lot about what to do and what not to do, and kind of what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. So I think, like, getting in touch with this community and kind of using things like I2C or INiTS to connect, I think that's I think, if there is one step, then I would say that's the step.
But what I also heard is hands off the keyboard and stop coding. That was quite interesting. It helped. It seems.
Well, we're not there, but
okay, I see. So thanks a lot, giving that the business insight. That now we just have 2 areas left, and I think we are quite good at the moment. So. I wouldn't say the big elephant in the room, but still a very, very big topic, talking about AI and life sciences. I think, at least in the conversations I have about this, the element of trustworthiness, trust, ethics, what are they doing with and so on, always comes up. So it seems to be at the heart of healthcare for, quite a long time, I would say, before AI. So we are asking clinicians to trust machines with quite serious decisions, or patients. What I heard at the moment, it's often to support, so don't get me wrong, but again, it comes up. So how do you tackle these issues like patient consent, data privacy, algorithmic transparency, and I can go on now with a lot of other words, all coming out of regulations. One of the things, for example, sometimes coming up in this area is, should we have AI review boards in clinical settings? To give just one example, okay? So how do you tackle these things? I mean, I'm pretty sure you experience them, or if not, then please tell it.
Yeah, so in the medical field, of course, the health data are very sensitive, and of course, in all these machines, we remove from the beginning all this sensitive patient-specific data, and only use the data that really are needed for the generation that we can generate the AI tools. So that's very important, and also the transparency is very important. So that from the beginning, when I talk with the patient about the surgery and also with my team, that I talk with the patient about the benefits of AI, which AI is really helpful for me. For example, that I can better estimate which tumor entity is, and then I can modify my surgical strategy based on these AI results. And of course, tell them we did a lot of patients and it's very safe, that they really can trust in these techniques. And of course, I think also such a AI review board would be a good idea, like an ethic committee or like ethic board, so that you can from the beginning also consider AI model considerations, also biases or ethical considerations. I think that would be very important. I think it should be implemented also in the AI thing. Maybe the Comprehensive Center would be also a good tool to implement such, to make AI in medicine safer and fairer.
I see. You're nodding, the other Georg.
Ah, okay. I'm just trying to adjust my microphone.
I see. Okay, so
I agree,
you haven't listened to a word. Okay.
No, I agree with Georg, of course. I think the challenge is to kind of have this. I mean, review board is one thing, but I think also then there is the question that always comes up of evaluation, right? So how to evaluate whether the AI works. Do we do that on our own? Like, does every hospital evaluate that AI on their own? And I think there, at the beginning, I just observed that there was a lot of kind of willingness to say, well, okay, we get the AI, then we evaluate it, and then we put it into practice. But I think people realize that that's just an incredible amount of work to kind of evaluate every AI that you take into the hospital. So I think like now, on the one hand side, people are starting to trust others if they evaluated that software or that AI model, that might also kind of transfer to my centers. But I think at the same time, and I think that's a good thing, is that also led to a bit more standardization in terms of what you should do in order to evaluate an AI. Standardization, also, like, you buy an AI, but there has to be a process to get rid of the AI if you figure out it's not good enough anymore, right? If it falls out of date, if it doesn't work anymore because you have new scanners, but it wasn't retrained, things like that. I think that everybody's getting into kind of thinking about how to do that effectively, and like review boards are one thing. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I think there is a lot of movement in terms of people trying to figure it out.
So still quite dynamic. Takeda with 242 years of existing. Yeah, I got it. How does it tackle something like that?
I think it takes everybody from the ideas to when it is in production and in the lab or in the operation room to share the feedback. So when, for example, at the moment of collecting the data, you need to ensure that the data is as representative as possible, and also that you have good quality of data, because sometimes when it's data entered by a human, we tend to be lazy and we don't want to enter those type of data, right? So how can we make sure that we have good quality of data and data that is also as good as what we want to bring? Then when you use those data and you want to bring the meaning to those data collected, who can bring the most standardized or governed understanding of those data that we may be using? And then data engineer, data scientists are also there to work on those data and find out, is there any bias in there? Is there any elements that from my personal life that I experienced and that is not reflected there? And how can I bring those data there? Or how can I make sure that this little underrepresented aspect is at the end highlighted and taken care of? And then if you have a model, or you want to bring an automatization or digitalization of something, you need to test multiple model. You need to have a training data set, test with multiple model, test also with multiple accuracy parameters, and make sure that those works, right? And also always have the professional, the person that knows the domain understanding to validate. Maybe from an AI, it was super great accuracy, but it was oversampling, right? So you need to really test on the quantitative level what it's saying, and on the qualitative level what it's saying. And then it's not because you have succeeded to find a model with the best accuracy that if you bring it to beta testing and it's also working great, that you are done with this work. No, you need to open and keep open this feedback loop to have those learnings from the people that really use it to say not only what is about the model that is not working and that is not trustworthy, but also about the experience. Like if I need to do 10 clicks, well, before I just need to write it on a piece of paper with my pen, you know that it will not be working, right? So it's not only this technical part and the feedback loop, it's the whole continuous process, monitoring, maintaining, and making sure that the communication is open.
So communication again, standardization, and also tackling some new areas like, okay, what do we do if the AI we are using now is going out of use? What to do then? So new questions. I heard review boards might be a step into the right direction, but what I also heard from you, Judan, is tackling these good old topics, which we heard for a long time, data quality, which means if you trust in your data, you might even trust the results, let's put it like that. Very, very fascinating. So we are coming now slowly to an end. People are getting hungry. Some of them, I feel a bit the eyes here. So let's talk about a bit more your personal journeys. All of you had quite a long intersection with AI and life sciences. Was there a specific moment when you realized, okay, this AI is really a thing, it could really change the field, even permanently maybe? Was it something like a moment of surprise, or was it more like, oh my God, that's happening now? Did you have such a moment, or was it just gradual? So like, oh, that's happening now.
Yeah, so when I first saw it, the technique in United States at the meeting, I was very impressed about the technique, but I couldn't really believe that it such help. And then I tried to make it to test it in Europe at the medical university in Vienna, and when I first tested that during surgery, I was really very impressed because I thought, I'm already done, and then I make the test with the AI. And they told me there's still some tumor left that maybe I would see afterwards in the postoperative MRI, and then it's too late. And so it was really confirmed also by histopathology that it's correct. And so that's really was very impressive for me that that technique is so precise and fast. So that's I couldn't believe it at first, but when I tried it and then it was
that's
great.
really life-changing for the patient.
Yeah, for me, and then really we also validated that with our conventional method, and then really nearly had a 100% accuracy. So it was really very impressive for us to see that.
I can understand.
So from my side, I started econometrics, and I was always a fan about coding and how to make sure that I can bring all this big knowledge about the whole bunch of people in one sentence and make sure that everybody can, benefit from it. And then I saw that only the super rich were having assistants and making their life easier. So I was like, okay, me too. I would like to have my life easier. So how can I do that? I even have some personal project to make my life easier, so it takes less time and I can focus on things that is more important for me. I went into AI, and I would say I have a quite diverse background because I didn't study medical and then I went to healthcare and then I just stayed in healthcare. On the contrary, I studied data and then I went to advertising, telecommunication, banking, and now here I am in healthcare. So if you're having that background, don't limit yourself to one industry. On the contrary, see data as a great asset and get the most out of your colleagues, expert in the field, and then try to bring something that makes impact for you, for your colleagues, and the people around you.
Thanks a lot.
So for me, it was when I was studying and when I was kind of starting with my master thesis, and it was in this time period where nobody was using artificial neural networks because, well, many different reasons why nobody was using them, but nobody was using them. But people were using things like PCA, like principal component analysis and canonical correlation analysis, which are now everybody thinks are very simple kind of tools just to summarize data. But my moment when I thought, what it's really amazing was when we were doing experiments with little, I don't know if you know Überraschungseier. So we had a huge, and I hope nobody from Überraschungseier is around, because they...
I don't think so. Somebody? No. Okay.
You can tell.
Oh, please, go on.
You're safe.
Because I'm asking because we had a lot of papers published with pictures of Überraschungseier figurines, because that was all our experiments we did with the computer vision, kind of estimating the pose and kind of classifying them, and eventually somebody had the great idea to write them and say, hang on, we do a lot of advertisement for you, can you give us some funding? And they wrote back, first of all, we don't give you funding, and second, stop immediately, because that's not what our image is about. But at that time we were doing these figurines, and I was just really fascinated by just doing PCA on this imaging data, and you got a curve in the image embedding space that kind of was corresponding to the pose of the thing, and that was...
So very, very different. Thanks a lot. Very different path to enlightenment, I would say. Maybe a short detour now to quite maybe not obvious, but a question which at least is important and also interesting to me and Vienna Data Science Group. Let's focus on the surrounding area and on life science a bit. Do you think that Vienna and also the surrounding area has a thing there? So I read a bit about BioCenter, about extension of BioCenter, and so on and so forth. So is Vienna here emerging as a bit of an AI and life science cluster, or is it just a hype?
I think yes.
Anybody?
Yes.
I mean,
very, very subjectively.
Yeah, totally subjectively.
We don't need statistics.
But I think like with the Life Science Center, with all of the kind of basic sciences centers, with now the new center coming to Vienna, with Böhringer, I think with this I think the strength is in this interdisciplinarity, in kind of different fields being at the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Also having the more academic and the more industry side of it close together, I think that makes Vienna strong there. And
you see?
Yeah.
Other thoughts on that?
I think also, yeah, the medical university in Vienna, it's really evolving. At the beginning, I only did know Georg as an expert in this field, and now he really could achieve that we come together and have this network, because all the groups worked separately. Now we found this connection, and so it's really fantastic to create this comprehensive center that we really can talk about our projects, maybe find synergies, and so I find in the last years a lot of evolved in this field, and I'm very thankful, and I think it's a good future.
Do you think Takeda, as a Japanese company, also noticed this tiny dot in Europe now, or is it just like Austria? Well, let's think.
No, for sure, Vienna and Austria in particular is really a center of interest. For Takeda, for example, Vienna, and especially the manufacturing part, we deliver a product over 100 countries because we are the center of Europe, and also because it's easier to also target all around. And then in Vienna, we have a new research and development center that will open at Seestadt. So collaboration with BOKU, with all the different hospitals, not only in Austria, but all over, are really a great innovation points to move on forward. Yeah.
Very cool. So it seems that this is something which will stay. So, and this is, I think, a perfect bridge to to my last question. So if somebody here in the audience or later on will hear an aspiring researcher who wants to go into the field of AI and life sciences, because now he's really amazed about that, if you could give one piece of advice to this young girl, guy, or a diverse person, what would that be?
I can start. So first, for sure, at Takeda, we look for data scientists. So check out
Go to Takeda, okay? Got it.
But yeah, for sure, for us, if you don't have the medical background, it's okay. I can assure you that. And what is important is really that you are a go-getter. You have ideas, you want to put that in application, you have also this great application in your mind, like I want to bring a life-changing solution to maybe the patient. I want to make sure that hospitals or doctors are less saturated with appointments and maybe with somebody who is just afraid that they have something. Those type of use cases and ideas are there to make you go further in this direction. And if you're not sure if it's that for you or not, I don't know about you, but I have wearables. Those are collecting data about my health. Take those data, try to do a data science use case with it. It's your data, so it can only benefit you.
Thanks a lot. Georg?
Yeah.